In this video, we're going to continue our discussion on solving trig equations, and we're going to deal specifically with equations that have half angles in them. So let's take a look at this first example that I have down here, where I want to solve this equation over the interval between 0 and 2 pi. So if we're looking at this, notice that if I take the sine of some angle, this here in parentheses, where the variable is at, is the angle that I'm talking about. And this angle is divided by 2 in this particular case. So we call this a half angle. And when we address these types of equations, we want to start by understanding the interval that we're talking about is addressing x. So if x is on the interval between 0 and 2 pi, then x divided by 2 would be on the interval between 0 divided by 2 and 2 pi divided by 2, which is just pi. So once we adjust our interval, then we're going to come back over here and we're going to try to solve this equation. So just like we've done previously, where I want to get all of my like terms together on the same side, I'm going to add sine x over here to the left-hand side. When I do that, I end up with 4 sine of x over 2 is equal to 2 square roots of 2. So I'm still trying to get the trig term by itself. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4. That leaves me with the sine of some angle equal to the square root of 2 over 2. Because if I divide this side by 4 and this side by 4, that reduces to be this. Now we want to kind of stop for just a second and ask ourselves, for what angle, when I take the sine of it, do I get a positive square root of 2 over 2? That's going to happen for us in both quadrants 1 and 2, right? So when I take the sine of some angle, I get the square root of 2 over 2, and that's positive in both the first and the second quadrants. So what angles are those? Those happen to be at pi over 4 for the first quadrant and 3 pi over 4 in the second quadrant. So I had angles here and I had angles here. But since we're solving this for the angle x over 2, so I just brought down my x over 2, giving me these values right here. I'm not done yet because I want to solve for x ultimately. So I'm going to multiply everything in here by 2, and I end up with x is now equal to pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. So this is the solution set referring to this equation. These are not as intuitive as, you can't just look at them maybe right off the bat and see if that is working out for you, I would say. But if you were to take my x value, let's just look at pi over 2, substitute that in for x here, you would come out with the left-hand side equaling the right. So you can always check them in that way. So that's the solution we're looking at for this problem. Let's look at another one together. This time, we're asking ourselves, what's the cosine of some angle that's equal to 1/2? First, let's go through and identify our interval again. So we know that when x is on the interval between 0 and 2 pi, then x over 2 is on the interval between 0 and pi, just pi. Okay? So now that we have that idea, let's go back in and let's say, okay, so the cosine of some angle is equal to positive 1/2. Now where does that occur? The cosine, when I take the cosine of some angle and get a positive 1/2, I am either up here in quadrant 1, or for cosine, I'm down here in quadrant 4. But just a minute. If I take the cosine of my half angle, I have to stay on the interval between 0 and pi. So this angle down here doesn't count. I'm going to ignore that angle for right now because it is not on this interval between 0 and pi. So now we're going to go back and we're going to say, okay, so what angle, when I take the cosine of it, gives me positive 1/2, and that's occurring at pi over 3. Since I'm solving for x, I'm going to multiply both sides by 2, and I find out that x is equal to 2 pi over 3. So this is the only angle that satisfies the solution that I need. If for some reason, let's just say you forgot about this interval right here. Okay, let's just say that I forgot about that interval right there, and I inadvertently wrote down this angle that's occurring in the fourth quadrant, which would be 5 pi over 3. Okay, even though we know already that's not going to happen, but what if I forgot? Well, if I multiplied 5 pi over 3 by 2, because I'm now solving for x, if I multiplied everything in here by 2, I would end up with 10 pi over 3. And again, 10 pi over 3 is all the way around plus more. 10 pi over 3 is not on the interval between 0 and 2 pi, which is the criteria for x. So if for some reason I don't catch it when I've done the half angle interval, I should catch it when I do the full angle over here. So this doesn't count. So when you're looking at how to solve half angle equations, you first want to look at the interval that they're occurring on. Then you come over here and you simplify it down to where you get the angle you're looking for. And make sure that that angle falls within the interval given, and then come up with your solutions.